Alvarez, 2045. The city glimmered under the artificial sunlight, a testament to humanity's resilience after decades of environmental catastrophes. From her laboratory window on the 73rd floor of the International Biological Institute, Dr. Liana Vu observed the harmonious cityscape with a mixture of pride and unease. The metropolis was a marvel of sustainable engineering, buildings constructed with self-regenerating materials, air purification systems disguised as decorative flora, and at its core, the revolutionary water recycling system that served 20 million citizens. Liana sipped her morning tea, watching the central water reservoir shimmer in the distance. As head of environmental toxicology at the IBI, she had helped design many of the biosafety protocols that kept Alvarez functioning. Yet recently, she'd been plagued by a nagging suspicion that their perfect system had vulnerabilities no one wanted to acknowledge. Dr. Vu, a smooth, gender-neutral voice interrupted her thoughts. Your presence is requested in the emergency analysis chamber. Priority level Alpha. Liana turned to face the holographic interface of her AI assistant. Kelix, what's happened? Information restricted until full team assembly. Security Protocol 17B. Her stomach tightened. Protocol 17B meant potential widespread biological threat. She grabbed her identification badge and headed for the door. Tell them I'm on my way. Start preliminary containment procedures. Already initiated, Kelix replied, its blue light pulsing slightly faster than normal, an algorithmic expression of urgency Liana had noticed it developing over the years. The emergency analysis chamber was a sterile, white room at the heart of the institute, equipped with the most advanced detection and containment technologies on Earth. When Liana entered, 5 of her colleagues were already assembled around the central holographic display, their faces tense under the harsh white light. Dr. Ria Anders, her closest colleague and friend, looked up as she entered. Her usually composed features were tight with concern. It's in the water, she said without preamble. What is? Liana approached the display, which showed a molecular structure she didn't recognize, something complex and strangely mutable. We don't know, said Dr. Hassan from the biochemical division. But it's spreading. 47 confirmed cases of poisoning across 12 different sectors in the last 6 hours. The purification systems? Failed to detect it, said Dr. Mirov. The evolutionary biologist whose research into adaptive organisms had earned him both acclaim and controversy. His tall, gaunt frame was hunched over the display, eyes alight with what seemed almost like fascination. It mimics water molecules until it enters a biological host. That's why our standard tests missed it. Liana felt a chill despite the temperature-controlled environment. Casualties? None yet, Ria replied. But symptoms are escalating rapidly. Neurological disruptions, cellular degradation, immune system collapse. We've quarantined the affected patients, but if this spreads through the entire water system, 20 million people, Liana finished quietly. Do we know the source? The director of the institute, Dr. Chen Wei, stepped forward. His weathered face betrayed no emotion, but Liana had worked with him long enough to recognize the subtle tension in his shoulders. Initial analysis suggests non-terrestrial origin. The room fell silent. Since the establishment of trade routes with the colonies on Mars and the diplomatic missions to the Saturnian moon settlements, Earth had implemented strict biological screening protocols. A breach of this magnitude wasn't just a health crisis. It was potentially an interplanetary incident. We're classifying this publicly as a chemical analysis exercise, Dr. Wei continued. The last thing we need is panic. The government has already approved this designation. Liana frowned. People are being poisoned, and we're calling it an exercise? Until we understand what we're dealing with. Yes, Wei said firmly. All water sectors are being quietly isolated and tested. Emergency reserves have been activated. We need samples from all infection sites, Liana said, shifting into crisis mode. Kelix, Authorize my full team for field collection. I want environmental data, patient blood work, distribution patterns, everything. Authorization granted, the AI responded. Deploying collection units. Dr. Mirov moved closer to the molecular display, manipulating it with slender fingers. Look at this structure, he murmured. It's almost intelligent in design. See how the outer shell perfectly mimics H2O until it encounters human protein markers? This wasn't an accident, Rhea concluded. It was engineered specifically for humans, which means we're looking at deliberate biological warfare, Liana said, the implication settling heavily in the room. Or an evolutionary nudge, Mirov said quietly, almost to himself. Liana gave him a sharp look, but was interrupted by an alert from Calyx. Preliminary patient analysis complete. Anomalous adaptation detected in toxin structure between first and current cases. The compound appears to be evolving in response to human immune reactions. The scientists exchanged alarmed glances. Adaptive toxins were the nightmare scenario in biodefense. Compounds that learned from their hosts and modified themselves to overcome resistance. We need to work on two fronts, Liana decided. Develop an antidote while simultaneously finding the source, if this is adapting. Containing it is our only chance. Over the next 72 hours, the situation deteriorated rapidly. Despite the public facade of a routine chemical analysis exercise, the reality within the institute was frantic. More cases appeared across Alvarez, with the first deaths reported on the second day. The toxin was evolving faster than their analysis could track, shifting its molecular structure in ways that seemed almost purposeful. Liana had barely slept, subsisting on synthetic stimulants and determination. The field data had confirmed their worst fears. The contamination was spreading through the central water system, bypassing even the most sophisticated filters. It's targeting specific genetic markers, she told the emergency team on the morning of the third day. Her voice was hoarse from exhaustion. That's how it decides when to activate, and it's not just in the water anymore, it's in the people. Those infected are becoming carriers, shedding modified versions through respiration and skin contact. We need to adjust our approach, Dr. Hassan argued. Instead of chasing an antidote for each mutation, we should focus on modifying human immunity to recognize all variants. That's too experimental, Rhea countered. We'd be altering the genetic makeup of 20 million people without proper testing. And the alternative is letting them die while we play catch-up with a toxin that's outsmarting us, Hassan shot back. The debate grew heated, with the team fracturing along ideological lines. Some, like Hassan, advocated for preemptive human modification, essentially rewriting the city's collective immune system. Others, including Rhea, insisted on traditional antidote development despite diminishing returns. Through it all, Liana noticed Dr. Mirov growing increasingly withdrawn, spending hours analyzing the toxin's evolutionary patterns with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Late that night, while most of the team had finally succumbed to exhaustion, Liana found Mirov alone in the main laboratory, surrounded by holographic projections of the toxin's molecular structure. "You should rest," she said, approaching cautiously. Something about his demeanor had been troubling her. "I'm close to understanding it," he replied without looking up. "It's beautiful, really. Not random mutations, deliberate adaptations. Almost like it's communicating with us." Liana studied him carefully. "Alexei, this thing has killed 23 people already." "Evolution always has casualties," he said softly. "But what if this isn't just an attack? What if it's an opportunity?" "An opportunity for what?" He finally turned to face her, eyes feverishly bright. "Humanity has stagnated. Liana, we've become too comfortable, too dependent on our perfect systems. Species that don't face pressure don't evolve. They die out when real challenges come." A cold realization dawned on her. "You know something about this toxin that you haven't shared." His expression flickered. "Guilt, perhaps." or simply calculation? I received a transmission 3 months ago, anonymous, from the Saturnian colonies. Theoretical research on adaptive biological agents that could upgrade human biology. Upgrade? Liana felt her anger rising. People are dying, Alexei. The weak ones, yes. But those who survive will be stronger. The compounds don't just attack, they integrate. The survivors will have enhanced immune capabilities, accelerated cellular regeneration. It's the next step for humanity. Liana stared at him in horror. You helped them. You gave them access to our water systems. I provided information, he admitted. They had the compound already. I just guided its application. Without thinking. Liana lunged for the emergency alert on the wall panel, but Mirov was faster. He grabbed her arm, his strength surprising her. Listen to me, he hissed. This isn't just about Alvarez. The old powers, Earth, Mars, they're planning to restrict the outer colonies, cut off resources because they fear what's happening out there. The evolution, they're developing weapon systems to keep us all in line. This is preventive action. You've betrayed everything we stand for, Liana said, twisting out of his grip. We're scientists. We're supposed to protect people. I am protecting people. All people. Not just the privileged citizens of Earth. Sometimes protection requires change. He stepped back, straightening his lab coat with a strange formality. I didn't expect you to understand immediately, but you will, when you see the results. Before she could respond, Kellix's voice interrupted them. Alert! Mutation acceleration detected in sectors 7 through 19. Adaptation rate increased by 400%. Containment protocols failing. Liana turned to the main screen, which showed the contamination spreading through the city's water grid like wildfire. What have you done? I've uploaded the full evolutionary sequence, Mirov said calmly. The process was too slow. It needed direction. She stared at him in disbelief. You're insane. I'm visionary, he corrected. And now I've done what's necessary. He moved toward the exit. You should focus on saving who you can. The strong will survive anyway. Liana slammed her hand on the security alert. Kellix, containment breach protocol. Detain Dr. Mirov immediately. The laboratory doors sealed instantly, but Mirov merely smiled. Too late. The system override is already in motion, and I'm not working alone. Security forces arrived within minutes, restraining Mirov despite his lack of resistance. But the damage was done. The toxin was now evolving too rapidly for their tracking systems to analyze, and reports of new cases were flooding in from across the city. In the emergency meeting that followed, Dr. Wei looked older than Liana had ever seen him. Dr. Mirov has compromised our entire defense system, he reported grimly. He's uploaded a virus into our analytical framework that prevents us from properly mapping the toxin's mutations. Our AI systems can't keep up. Can we purge the virus? Ria asked. Not quickly enough, Hassan replied. It's integrated itself into the core programming. We'd have to take the entire system offline, which means losing all current analysis capabilities. Liana paced the room, mind racing. Then we work without the AI. Old school. We know the original compound structure. If we can isolate the fundamental mechanism it uses to adapt. That would take weeks, Hassan objected. We don't have weeks. Then we make an educated guess. Liana decided. Based on what we know about the toxin's behavior, we develop a broad-spectrum antidote that targets the one thing that hasn't changed, its method of activation in human cells. That's incredibly risky, Ria warned. Without proper testing, the cure could be worse than the disease. We don't have a choice, Liana replied. Mirov's right about one thing. This is evolving too fast for conventional responses. We need to be equally adaptive. For the next 24 hours, they worked frantically, combining centuries of biochemical knowledge with desperate innovation. The team developed a compound that theoretically would bind to the toxin's activation sites, rendering it inert regardless of its evolutionary state. The problem was testing. Computer simulations were unreliable with Mirov's virus in the system, and there wasn't time for traditional clinical trials. "I'll test it," Liana finally announced to the stunned laboratory. "Absolutely not," Ria protested. "We have no idea what the side effects could be." "Then find me a better option," Liana challenged. "Every minute we debate, more people die. The toxin is in every water source now. We're running out of containment options." Dr. Wei studied her gravely. "You understand what you're volunteering for?" Liana nodded. "I helped build these systems. Their failure is my responsibility too." "I'll prepare a controlled exposure chamber," Hassan said quietly. "We can monitor everything in real time." The test protocol was brutally simple. Liana would be exposed to a controlled amount of the toxin, then immediately administered the antidote. If it worked, her body would neutralize the compound. If not, "Record everything," she instructed as the team helped her into the sealed chamber. "Whatever happens, the data could save others." Ria gripped her hand before the chamber door closed. "This isn't your fault, and this isn't how science is supposed to work. Sometimes science is what we make it," Liana replied with a small smile. "See you on the other side." Inside the chamber, Liana sat on the examination table, electrodes monitoring her vital signs. Through the transparent walls, she could see her colleagues watching anxiously. Kelix's interface hovered nearby, recording all parameters. "Initiating controlled exposure," the AI announced. A fine mist sprayed from nozzles above, settling on Liana's skin and being drawn into her lungs with each breath. She felt nothing at first, then a slight tingling in her extremities. "Toxin active in bloodstream," Kelix reported. "Cellular interaction beginning." The tingling intensified, becoming painful. Liana gritted her teeth as the sensation spread throughout her body, a burning that seemed to reach into her very cells. On the monitors, her vital signs began to fluctuate. "Administering antidote now." Hassan's voice came through the speaker, tense with concern. A robotic arm extended from the wall, delivering the experimental compound via injection. The burning sensation flared intensely, and Liana couldn't suppress a cry of pain. Her vision blurred, the laboratory dissolving into swirling patterns of light and dark. She was vaguely aware of alarms sounding, of voices raised in concern. Something was happening that they hadn't anticipated. The antidote was interacting with the toxin in unexpected ways, creating new compounds within her system. "Her neural patterns are changing," someone shouted. "The antidote is crossing the blood-brain barrier." Liana tried to speak, to tell them she could feel it working, fighting the toxin but changing her in the process. But darkness was creeping in from the edges of her consciousness, drawing her down into silence. Her last thought before losing consciousness was surprisingly clear. "I promised to protect humanity. I will remember that promise." When Liana awoke, she was lying in a recovery pod, its transparent cover reflecting her pale face back at her. She felt strange, lighter somehow, as if something fundamental had shifted within her. But what disturbed her more was the emptiness in her mind. Fragments of memory floated just out of reach, tantalizingly familiar, yet impossible to grasp. The pod cover slid open, and Ria's worried face appeared above her. "Liana, can you hear me?" "Yes," she replied, her voice sounding foreign to her own ears. "What happened? The antidote?" "It worked," Ria said, relief evident in her voice. "But there were complications. The compound affected your hippocampus, the memory center of your brain. You've been unconscious for 3 days. Liana struggled to sit up, fighting a wave of dizziness. "The city? The water supply?" "We mass-produced the antidote based on your results. Distribution is underway through emergency air systems." The death toll stopped rising 12 hours ago. Rhea hesitated. But Liana, what do you remember? Liana closed her eyes, trying to organize the fragments floating in her consciousness. I remember the Institute, my work. I remember you, Hassan, Wei. She frowned. There was a crisis. The water. People were dying. Another fragment clicked into place. Someone betrayed us. Dr. Mirov, Rhea supplied. He's in custody now. The Saturnian faction he was working with has been identified. It's being handled at the highest diplomatic levels. More pieces assembled themselves in Liana's mind, but with disturbing gaps. She remembered the purpose of their work, the urgency, but specific details, conversations, discoveries, personal moments were missing. Your procedural memory is intact, Rhea explained, noting her confusion. You remember how to be a scientist, how to do your work, but some of your episodic memories, personal experiences, have been affected. The doctors believe it's temporary. Liana nodded slowly, then froze as one memory surfaced with crystal clarity. I promised to protect humanity, she said aloud. That's important. I need to remember that. Rhea looked at her curiously. From the test chamber? You were saying something like that when we pulled you out? No. Liana shook her head. It's more than that. It feels fundamental. She couldn't explain the certainty she felt, the sense that this wasn't just a fragment, but a cornerstone of something vital. Over the following weeks, as Alvarez slowly recovered from what the public still knew only as an advanced chemical analysis exercise, Liana struggled to piece together her fragmented memory. She returned to work, finding that her scientific knowledge remained intact even as personal connections sometimes eluded her. The antidote had been deployed citywide, saving countless lives. Those who had been infected and survived showed remarkable recovery rates, though medical monitoring would continue for years to assess long-term effects. But something continued to trouble Liana. As she reviewed the crisis documentation, inconsistencies emerged. Security protocols that should have detected the initial contamination had failed too comprehensively. Mirov's access to critical systems had been too extensive for his clearance level. One evening, working late in her laboratory, Liana discovered an encrypted file in her personal database. The encryption method was unusual, keyed to her own biometric signature in a way that suggested she had created it herself. Before the memory loss, Kelix, she called to the AI, help me access this file. I detect potential classified material. Dr. Vu, are you certain you wish to proceed? Yes. Authorization Vu Alpha 793. The file unlocked, revealing a data collection she had apparently been compiling for months before the crisis. Water quality anomalies, minor system breaches, unusual communications between government officials and off-world entities, all pointing to one disturbing conclusion. Elements within Earth's government had known about the potential for a biological attack and had allowed limited access to Alvarez's systems. They were testing our vulnerability, she murmured, scanning the evidence. Or worse, testing the population's response to the toxin. As the implications sank in, another memory fragment clicked into place. A conversation overheard between Dr. Wei and an unnamed government official. Controlled exposure is the only way to prepare. The outer colonies are developing too quickly. We need adaptive capabilities of our own. Liana sat back, stunned. Had Earth's government deliberately allowed a limited biological attack on its own citizens as a test case? Was Mirov a convenient scapegoat for a larger conspiracy? The antidote she had helped create, the one currently circulating in the bloodstreams of millions. What was its true purpose? Protection, certainly, but perhaps also modification, preparation for something yet to come. She closed the file, mind racing. The memory loss from the antidote now seemed less like an unfortunate side effect and more like a convenient erasure. How many others had pieces of this puzzle but couldn't connect them? Kelix, she said slowly. This conversation is classified under my personal research protocol. No records, no logs. Acknowledged. Dr. Vu, no record will be maintained. I need you to help me with a new project. Unofficial. We're going to call it Extended Chemical Analysis. Parameters, Dr. Vu? Liana looked out at the city lights of Alvarez, at the millions of people who believed they had been saved from an external threat. People who trusted their government, their scientists, their water. We're going to find out what they really did to us, she said quietly, and what they're preparing us for. As she turned back to her console, the promise echoed in her mind with renewed clarity. I promise to protect humanity, not just from alien toxins or rogue scientists, but from those who would manipulate humanity's very nature for their own ends. The water still flowed through Alvarez, clear and seemingly pure, but Liana now knew that clarity didn't mean safety, and that the most dangerous poisons were those you never saw coming. For the next several weeks, Liana conducted her clandestine investigation. She moved cautiously, aware that too much obvious interest in the crisis might trigger surveillance. Instead, she approached it tangentially, requesting data for seemingly unrelated research projects and gradually assembling a more complete picture. The evidence was disturbing. 6 months before the crisis, Earth's central government had established a classified research division called Evolutionary Resilience Initiative. Its stated purpose was to investigate human adaptation to off-world biological threats. But the methodologies outlined in the documents Liana uncovered suggested something far more interventionist. They were looking for ways to accelerate human evolution. She explained to Ria, the only colleague she dared trust with her findings. They met in Liana's apartment, well away from the Institute's surveillance systems. Ria studied the holographic data with growing alarm. This goes beyond defense research. They're talking about directed evolution, genetic modifications that would cascade through generations. And Mirov was connected to it, Liana added, not as an outsider working with Saturnian extremists, but as a government consultant who went rogue when he disagreed with their methods. So the attack wasn't just from external forces? I think it was both, Liana said. Mirov had legitimate connections with the outer colonies. He shared concerns about Earth's intentions toward them. When he discovered the government was planning preemptive biological modifications for Earth's population, he contacted sympathizers in the colonies. And they provided the toxin, Ria concluded. A toxin that was already under study by Earth's government. Liana nodded. They let it happen. Ria, they wanted to see how it would interact with the population. Mirov just accelerated their timeline. That's why containment procedures were so slow to implement, Ria realized. And why Dr. Wei insisted on the chemical analysis exercise cover story from the very beginning. Exactly. They never intended to stop it completely, just to control its spread and study the results. Ria paced the small apartment, agitated. But they didn't anticipate Mirov sabotaging the analysis systems. That forced their hand. Which is where we came in, Liana said bitterly. Unwitting participants in their experiment. The antidote we created, it doesn't just neutralize the toxin. According to these molecular analyses, it integrates with it, creating a stable compound that remains dormant in the body. Dormant until what? That's what I need to find out. Liana gestured to the final set of data. These are test results from recovered patients. Their cellular structure shows subtle changes, enhanced immune response, accelerated healing, improved oxygen utilization, nothing dramatic enough to raise alarms, but collectively. They're evolving, Ria whispered. Just as Mirov said. But under government control, not colony influence, Liana added. That's the difference. The implications were staggering. 20 million citizens of Alvarez had essentially been subjected to genetic modification without consent. Under the guise of emergency medical treatment, and the government was monitoring the results, presumably to refine the process for wider application. "We need to expose this," Rhea said firmly. "With what evidence?" Liana countered. "Most of what we have is circumstantial or obtained through unauthorized access. They discredit us immediately, or worse." "Then what do we do?" Liana was silent for a long moment, weighing options, responsibilities, consequences. "We need more concrete evidence, something they can't deny or bury. And we need to understand exactly what the antidote is doing to people, and if there's a way to reverse it, or at least to give people informed choice about what's happening to their bodies." "That means getting back into the secure labs," Rhea pointed out. "After hours, without authorization." "Yes." Liana met her friend's gaze steadily. "I won't ask you to risk your career, or worse. This is my choice." Rhea shook her head. "You forget I was there when you nearly died testing that antidote. I've been part of this from the beginning. I'm not backing out now." They planned carefully over the next few days. Security at the Institute had been heightened since the crisis, but as senior researchers, they still had considerable access. The challenge would be reaching the most restricted areas where the ongoing analysis of the crisis was being conducted, areas now under direct government oversight. Their opportunity came sooner than expected. 5 weeks after the crisis, a follow-up evaluation of all Institute staff was scheduled, routine blood work to ensure no lingering contamination. Liana and Rhea volunteered to oversee the collection process, giving them legitimate access to the medical facilities. "We'll have approximately 20 minutes between shifts," Liana told Rhea as they prepared the collection stations. "The surveillance systems run on a rotating diagnostic cycle at O2 There's a brief window when the cameras in Section C reboot. And you're sure the samples we need are in biocontainment room 3? "According to the scheduling system, yes, they're running comparative analyses on original toxin samples, evolved variants, and the antidote compound. When the moment came, they moved with practiced efficiency as the night shift technicians departed and the morning team was still checking in. Liana and Rhea slipped through the secure corridors, using Liana's senior clearance to access the restricted wing. "Calyx," Liana subvocalized to her AI interface, linked through her neural implant. "Run interference pattern View 7. Any automated alerts from this sector, delay by 2 minutes. Compliance with this request may violate security protocols," the AI responded in her mind. "Override. Authorization Liana Vu, Science Director, Emergency Research Protocol." There was a pause, longer than an AI should need to process such a command. "Acknowledged. Interference pattern running. 2-minute delay initiated. Be advised, Dr. Vu, that this action is being logged." "Understood." The hesitation troubled her, but there was no time to analyze it now. Biocontainment Room 3 required both biometric and code authentication. Liana's handprint and retinal scan were accepted, but the system requested a secondary authorization. "That's new," she muttered. "They've upgraded security." Rhea glanced nervously at the corridor. "Can you bypass it?" "Maybe." Liana connected her personal device to the security panel. "Calyx, run decryption sequence." "Working," the AI replied. "Warning. Unauthorized decryption attempts are monitored by Central Security." The seconds stretched painfully as they waited. Finally, the panel flashed green, and the heavy door slid open with a hydraulic hiss. Inside, the biocontainment room was bathed in blue light, illuminating rows of sealed containers and sophisticated analysis equipment. Holographic displays showed molecular structures rotating slowly above research stations. "There," Rhea pointed to a sealed unit marked with high-level biohazard warnings. "That's the original toxin sample." Liana moved to the central console. "I need to copy the research data first. It won't matter what we find if we can't prove the analysis methodology." As she worked to access the secure database, Rhea examined the containment unit, Liana, look at this. The sample designation. It's not from the water crisis. This toxin was synthesized 3 years ago. Earth origin. Download everything, Liana instructed, her suspicions confirmed. Use the quantum encryptor so they can't trace what we accessed. They worked quickly, copying massive data files while collecting minute samples of both the original toxin and the evolved variants. The antidote compound proved more difficult to access. It was stored in a separate containment field with additional security measures. We need to hurry, Rhea urged, checking the time. The surveillance cycle will reset in 4 minutes. Liana focused on the final security barrier. Almost there. This encryption is military grade. They really didn't want anyone examining this independently. The containment field finally deactivated, allowing them to extract a microscopic sample of the antidote. As Liana carefully sealed it in a specialized container, an alert chimed softly from the main console. "What's that?" Rhea asked sharply. Liana checked the display and felt her blood go cold. "Security override. Someone's accessing this room remotely." She turned to Rhea urgently. "We need to leave. Now." They secured their samples and wiped all evidence of their presence from the system logs. As they prepared to exit, Liana hesitated, her attention caught by a final data display, a projection of population-wide genetic drift over the next 5 generations, based on the antidote's integration. "They are planning for the long term," she whispered, quickly capturing the image. "This isn't just about current defense. They're reshaping humanity's future." The corridor was still empty when they emerged, but the subtle shift in the environmental systems, a barely perceptible change in air pressure, told Liana that security protocols had been elevated. "Take a different route back," she instructed Rhea. "Use the maintenance corridors. I'll go through the main hall to draw attention if there is any." Rhea nodded grimly. "Be careful. Meet at the secondary location if anything goes wrong." They separated, each carrying half of the collected evidence. Liana walked purposefully through the main research areas, nodding casually to early arriving colleagues. She was nearly back to her own laboratory when Kellix's voice spoke in her mind. "Dr. Vu, Director Wei has requested your immediate presence in his office." Her heart rate spiked, but she kept her expression neutral. "Did he specify the reason?" "Negative. However, the request carries alpha priority." "Inform him I'll be there shortly. I need to secure some sensitive materials first." In her laboratory, Liana quickly concealed the samples and data chips in a hidden compartment she had prepared days earlier. Then, composing herself, she headed for the director's office. Dr. Wei was not alone. A woman Liana didn't recognize sat across from him, her crisp gray uniform marking her as government security, not scientific personnel. "Dr. Vu," Wei greeted her, his expression unreadable. "Thank you for coming promptly. This is Commander Ellison from Central Government Security. She has some questions about your recent research activities." Liana nodded politely to the commander, maintaining a calm exterior despite her internal alarm. "Of course. How can I help?" Commander Ellison studied her with cold efficiency. "Dr. Vu, our systems detected unauthorized access to restricted materials earlier this morning. Your credentials were used." "There must be some mistake," Liana replied evenly. "I've been overseeing the staff evaluation process all morning." "Before that," Ellison pressed, "between 02:13 and 2:31 specifically, I was preparing the medical stations. You can check the logs." "We have..." Ellison's gaze didn't waver. "There's a 20-minute gap in your logged activities," Dr. Wei interjected, his tone concerned rather than accusatory. "Liana, if you needed access to the crisis materials for your research, there are proper channels. After your experience with the antidote testing, your judgment may be affected." The implication was clear. They were suggesting her memory issues might be causing erratic behavior. It was a clever approach, one that would discredit any claim she might make about government conspiracy. "My judgment is perfectly sound," Liana stated firmly, "and my work has been entirely within protocol parameters. If my credentials were used inappropriately, perhaps someone else accessed them. Security has been compromised before, as we all know too well." Ellison's expression hardened. "Dr. Vu, unauthorized investigation into classified material is considered a serious breach of national security. The water crisis involved sensitive international relations. Rogue research could jeopardize delicate diplomatic efforts." "I understand completely," Liana assured her. "Which is why I would never conduct unauthorized research. My loyalty to this institute and to Earth is absolute." The interview continued for another 30 minutes, with Ellison probing for inconsistencies while Wei watched with increasing discomfort. Liana maintained her denial, careful not to provide any details that could be verified or disproven. Finally, apparently satisfied that she had no immediate evidence, Ellison stood. "We'll be conducting a full security audit of all systems and personnel. In the meantime, Dr. Vu, your clearance is restricted to Level 3. No access to crisis materials or related research without direct supervision, if you feel that's necessary," Liana replied neutrally, "though it will hamper my ongoing toxicology work." "Consider it temporary," Wei said, clearly trying to smooth the situation. "Just until the audit is complete." After Ellison departed, Wei gestured for Liana to remain. When they were alone, he sighed heavily. "What are you doing, Liana? These people aren't to be trifled with." "I'm doing my job," she replied, "investigating toxins and their effects. Isn't that what the Institute is for?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Listen to me carefully. There are larger considerations at work. The relationship between Earth and the outer colonies is at a tipping point. Biological security is now a matter of planetary defense." "Is that why Earth synthesized the toxin 3 years ago?" Liana asked bluntly. "For defense?" Wei's expression confirmed her suspicions before he could compose himself. "You don't understand the complexities. I understand that 20 million people were exposed to an engineered compound without their knowledge or consent." She interrupted. "I understand that I nearly died testing an antidote that doesn't just neutralize the toxin but integrates with it to create permanent biological changes. What I don't understand is how scientists sworn to protect humanity could participate in such an experiment." Wei was silent for a long moment. "The outer colonies are evolving, Liana. The different environmental pressures, radiation, gravity, atmospheric composition, they're changing faster than natural selection would permit. Some are deliberately accelerating the process. In 50 years, they could be different enough from Earth humans to consider themselves a separate species. What happens then? So Earth's solution is to forcibly evolve its own population, without consent? Evolution doesn't ask for consent," Wei said quietly. "Neither does extinction." Liana stood, unable to continue the conversation. "My memory may have gaps, Director, but my ethics don't. Whatever is happening here goes against everything I believe in as a scientist and as a human being." "Be careful, Liana," Wei warned as she turned to leave. "Your position here isn't just about your research anymore. It's about your access to information. Information that certain people would prefer remained contained." The threat was thinly veiled, but Liana refused to be intimidated. "Thank you for your concern, Director. I'll keep that in mind." Outside, she subvocalized to Calyx. "Secure message to Ria Anders. Code yellow. Meet at secondary location at 1800. "Message sent," the AI confirmed. "Dr. Vu, I'm required to inform you that your activities are now under enhanced monitoring per Security Directive 23A. "Understood." Calyx. She hadn't expected anything less. The question now was how to proceed with their investigation under increased scrutiny, and what to do with the evidence they had already gathered. That evening, In a small cafe in the outskirts of Alvarez, Liana and Ria met as planned. They spoke in generalities, aware that even here they might be monitored. "The project parameters have changed," Liana said carefully. "Access to primary research materials will be limited for the foreseeable future." Ria nodded, understanding. "Perhaps we should focus on secondary analysis then. Theoretical applications rather than direct experimentation." "Exactly. In fact, I'm considering a temporary research sabbatical. Some distance might provide better perspective." "The Northern Research Station," Ria suggested. The remote facility was ostensibly for environmental monitoring, but had comprehensive laboratory facilities and minimal government oversight. "Possibly. I'll need to secure appropriate approvals." "Of course." They continued their coded conversation, establishing contingency plans. The samples and data they had collected would need to be analyzed away from the Institute's surveillance. More importantly, they needed to find a way to verify their findings and present them in a form that couldn't be easily dismissed or covered up. As they parted, Ria gripped Liana's hand tightly. "Be careful. They'll be watching you more closely now." "And you?" Liana reminded her. "Don't take unnecessary risks. If they catch one of us, the other needs to continue." Back in her apartment, Liana found her home security system had been tampered with. Subtly, but the signs were there for someone with her training. They had searched her residence while she was at work. Fortunately, she had anticipated this possibility and kept nothing incriminating at home. She went through her evening routine normally, giving no indication that she had noticed the intrusion. But as she prepared for bed, she made a decision. Waiting for official approval for her research sabbatical would take too long, and now that she was under active surveillance, her window of opportunity was closing rapidly. "Kelix," she subvocalized, "prepare travel arrangements to the Northern Environmental Research Station. Priority clearance. Departure tomorrow at 05 Hancock. This request requires Director Wei's approval." The AI responded. "Override. Emergency Protocol, VU 924. Environmental toxin alert in Northern Water Basin requires immediate expert assessment." There was that strange hesitation again before Kelix replied. "Request processing. Be advised that all emergency protocols are subject to secondary verification within 24 hours. "Understood. Proceed." It was a temporary solution at best. Once the false emergency was discovered, they would know she had deliberately circumvented protocols, but it would give her enough time to get to the Northern Station and begin analyzing their samples. As she lay in bed, ostensibly sleeping while her mind raced with contingency plans, a new memory fragment surfaced, a conversation with Mirov months before the crisis. "They're afraid. Liana," he had told her. "Earth, Mars, the established powers. They're afraid of what humans might become if we let adaptation take its natural course. Evolution takes thousands of years," she had countered. "Not anymore. Not with our technology, and not with the environmental pressures of space colonization. We're at a branching point in human history. The question is whether that branching will be natural or controlled, and by whom." The memory brought a new perspective to their current situation. This wasn't just about a single biological attack or a government experiment. It was about the fundamental direction of human evolution and who would control it. The antidote circulating in the bloodstreams of Alvarez's citizens wasn't just a medical intervention. It was a means of ensuring that humanity evolved according to Earth's blueprint rather than diverging into multiple evolutionary paths. Control versus diversity, stability versus adaptation. As dawn approached, Liana made her final preparations. Whatever happened next, the truth needed to emerge. People deserved to know what was being done to them and to have a voice in humanity's evolutionary future. Her communicator chimed softly. A message from Ria. "Compound analysis initiated. Preliminary results concerning. Proceed with caution." So Ria had already begun examining the samples they'd collected. The fact that she found the results concerning only reinforced Liana's determination. "I promise to protect humanity," she whispered to herself as she gathered her essential belongings. The promise felt more urgent now, more complicated. Protecting humanity might mean protecting its right to evolve naturally, in all its potential diversity, even if that meant an uncertain future. Outside, the first light of dawn illuminated Alvarez. From her window, Liana could see the central water reservoir glimmering in the distance, still the heart of the city, still trusted by millions who drank from it daily, unaware of the changes flowing through their bodies. The water looked so clear, so pure. But Liana now knew that clarity was an illusion, and that the most profound changes often came disguised as salvation. With newfound resolve, she shouldered her bag and headed for the door. The journey ahead would be dangerous, the outcome uncertain, but the alternative, allowing humanity's future to be determined in secret by those who valued control over choice, was unacceptable. The water had been poisoned, then had been cured. But the truth was far more complex than either narrative suggested, and Liana was determined to ensure that humanity understood what was really flowing through its veins before the changes became irreversible. As she stepped out into the morning light, another memory fragment clicked into place. Something Dr. Wei had said during the crisis. Sometimes to save a species, you have to change it. Perhaps he was right, but Liana believed that such changes, such evolution, should come from informed choice, not from secrets hidden in the water that gave life to them all.